Hey everyone, welcome to the Health Babes podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Becky Campbell with Dr. Krystal Hohn. Today we have Shawn Stevenson on. He is the author of Eat Smarter. It's a family cookbook. And I can tell you, I love this book. I use this book with my own family. And we talked a lot about, eating smarter, but we also talked about the importance of eating with family. So this episode is really great and I know you'll love it. Let's welcome Shawn Stevenson to the show. We are so excited to have you. We're kind of fangirling you off air. Yes. We've been listening to your podcast forever. So welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
You're welcome. And I want to start off by talking about your book because you have a new book called Eat Smarter. And this book is really good. I love so many things about it. It's so good for someone who really doesn't know what to do and they want to get started in eating well and just kind of making some changes. And the recipes are really, really good. Like my whole family loves them. So my youngest loves to cook with me. And every time I'm like, do you want to pick a recipe? This is the book he wants to pick it from recently. So we've made a lot of the stuff in here. So
that's the ultimate stamp of approval. Right there.
Kids, right? Kids are the hardest.
Yeah.
Exactly. And that's the feedback I've been getting, and to be completely open, my intention was to make this a book of education and empowerment and of course, delicious recipes.
Yeah.
But the way that people are using it, it's all about the recipes. It's been all about the food. If you go to Amazon, and I don't have a cooking show, all right? I'm a nutritionist. I did used to teach cooking classes back in the day. But if you compare the response, and I'm not telling people to go leave reviews. People are just making the food and posting it on Amazon and raving about the recipes. Yeah. And I'm just like, when it boils down to it, this is just about the food. It's about food and connection. And as you mentioned, this along with your kid and like that important education, getting people in, especially our kids, this kind of literacy in the kitchen, is such an important life skill to be able to feed oneself. And unfortunately, of course, as you all know, it's been a lot of programming about what's bad for you. Like, that's kind of the lens through which we've been looking at food instead of leaning into all the things you get to have, all the deliciousness and being able to learn about real foods and using them in delicious and creative ways. And, people say this a lot, but being a labor of love, it truly, truly was a labor of love. It was a lot of recipes and cooking and food preparation. And, I've got my kids here in the house as well. So it was a lot of taste testing. But that's the key. If you know that the kids love it, then, we're good to go.
And what I love too is you have a lot of research too, backed up with a lot of the ingredients and the different things that you use in the book, which is huge. This is what makes your book different, is what I could really tell.
Yeah, thank you for that. That for me, that was the heart of it. There's over 250 peer-reviewed studies in this book, interwoven, and it's done in a way that I think, life was kind of qualifying me to do, which is like to make it entertaining and understandable and fun. I went to a traditional university, a state school, and got my education. I had my nutritional science class, but I was wildly miseducated about what actually works in the real world. And so, but I'm also I'm very passionate about science and about biology and kinesiology. And most importantly, I'm very passionate about wellness and results and people feeling good. Yeah. And so taking a lot of this data and then tying it together in a fun, creative way was really, it was challenging, but it's a challenge that I love. Sure. And, but to share with you, like the actual reason why I wrote this book was because of the science around how eating together with friends and family impacts our health outcomes. And I was shocked, but then it's one of those things where you're shocked initially. There's just like, of course, that makes sense. And so that was really at the heart of it for me.
Yeah. So, I want to start the conversation with, we hear, especially with us as health practitioners, we have these big macro cultural shifts that we need to be doing, right, to help change our health. Can you share some of the micro things that we need to be looking at culturally to start changing the health of our families? You talk a lot about that.
Absolutely. For me, I'm always thinking about the what first. You know, a lot of people want change and they want to know how to do stuff without understanding what we're actually dealing with a lot of times. And so just to define culture a little bit, our culture is the collective values, attitudes, beliefs, and behaviors of a group of people that is then passed on from one generation to the next. All right. And so our culture is really controlling our thoughts. It's controlling our belief systems. It's controlling our choices. We might think that we are living in a society of freedom, but that freedom, and not to say that we're not in some aspects, many aspects, but the freedom is going to be based on the choices you've been exposed to. There's so much about life. There's so much about our choices, possible choices that we don't even know that exist because of our particular culture. So to give an example in the context of food, you know, there are cultures that are eating things that are completely foreign to us and, dare I say, super weird, right? We might see, you know, somebody in Cambodia eating a deep fried tarantula,
right?
Or my wife is from Kenya, and when she told me that her favorite thing to eat when she was a little girl was it's called nyama choma, which was barbecue goat meat. I'm just like, goats, you know, just like, it seems so strange. Like goats are kind of, I think they call baby goats kids, right? Like it just seems super strange to me, but that is the choices that she's been exposed to in her particular culture. In our culture here in the United States, we are the most inundated culture with ultra processed foods. This is fairly new as far as human evolution. It's really just been about the last 50 or so years that we've been really immersed in these ultra processed foods. And it's important to define what ultra processed foods are, because processed foods or processing of foods has been done for thousands upon thousands upon thousands of years. Dating back as early as we can find, humans have been processing foods in some way, you know, whether that is, you know, mortar and pestle and just breaking stuff down. Cooking is processing the food and changing some of the chemistry of that food. In some instances, making things more bioavailable. You know, I can go for days just talking about that. But also, you know, taking tomatoes and making a pasta sauce, adding spices, and pushing and pressing out the oil out of olives and coconuts, and the list goes on and on. Those are all processing. That, and this is the rub. This is the most important fact with this, is there's still proximity to something real. All right. There was just a step or two, and you could still tell where that pasta sauce came from. All right. Versus ultra processed foods is when we have like a field of corn and somehow, some way it becomes a bowl of Lucky Charms, or a field of wheat somehow, some way becomes Pop-Tarts, or, you know, Frosted Flakes, or, you know, that field of corn becoming corn syrup for sodas, and the list goes on and on. It is so far removed from anything real. So, for example, in Kenya, there are all these different tribes. And each tribe, of course, they think that they're the best one. My wife thinks her tribe is the best tribe. But each tribe has their own food and food systems and culture. And the Maasai is one of the Kenyan tribes that a lot of people know about. You know, they're incredibly fit. They have like almost superhuman abilities, like with their ability to jump very high, for example, and their stamina. And they have this kinship with cows, you know, so in particular, drinking milk and blood of cows. Okay. Because again, it's kind of strange, but their rates of chronic diseases are dramatically, it's not even comparable, lower than the average person in the United States. And if I was to bring a bowl of Lucky Charms to a person in the Maasai who hasn't had exposure to a cell phone or whatever the case might be, they wouldn't have any clue whatsoever where that came from. There's no evidence of anything real about it. That, in essence, is an ultra processed food, and all these synthetic ingredients, additives and preservatives and food dyes, and the list goes on and on. And many of these compounds, and we can talk about that today if we have time, have been categorized as carcinogens by the World Health Organization, for example, or obesogens, obesity-causing agents. And these foods are riddled with these things. And here in the United States, and just to speak about the cultural contagion, this is according to the BMJ. This is top-tier peer-reviewed journal. They affirmed just a couple of years ago, the average adult in the United States diet now is 60% ultra processed foods, right? So made up of these fake foods that we have no exposure to throughout our evolution, just like, bam, we've been hit with this. But the other reason, in addition to the science around how our relationships impact our health outcomes when it has to do with food, the second reason I wrote this book was this is the first major book to share this recently published study in the Journal of the American Medical Association, and they tracked ultra-processed food consumption by our kids.
Yeah.
For 20 years, a 20-year study, all right? And so in 1999, the average child in the United States diet was already 61% fake foods. And by 2018, that number was about 68%. It's almost 70% of the average child's diet in the United States is now fake, ultra-processed foods. And as you know, with studies, we're talking about the average. There are going to be people at the higher end and the lower end. And I was definitely one of those kids who was at the higher end. About 90% of my diet was ultra-processed foods. And my health showed that accordingly. And it's part of the reason I am in this field today, was being able to change some of that. And so that's the big cultural contagion that we're really dealing with right now, is the normalization of eating things that are not real, of eating things that are incredibly detrimental to human biology, and we call it food. But what's different with me is that I still, even though that I'm kind of setting this up as like, yeah, it's pretty messed up, we still don't want to get into giving food morality and villainizing these foods, all right? Because if we were, there's context for everything, maybe we're stranded in, a drive to Las Vegas, and there's a convenience store there, and it's completely, that's been shut down for a year, but you find a box of Lucky Charms, all right? And it's 5 years old, but it's still good enough to eat. It can keep you going, it can help you to survive. And so there's context for everything. But most importantly, it's just the awareness to flip this switch in our mind. Like, wait a minute, we're not even eating real food. We're not eating foods that have a resonance with ourselves as human beings. And so that's really what we're dealing with. There are subcategories that I outline in the book. One of those being all of these newly invented, highly refined seed oils that there's a lot of bickering back and forth about it, but I'm just providing the real science, the real data on what some of these things are doing to our fat cells, doing to our heart health. And so these are the cultural contagions you want to protect your family from.
Don't you notice too, like when you've worked with people and helped them go from eating like that to eating real food, sometimes it takes them a little while to start tasting the food because of all the stuff that, the MSG and the stuff that really makes those, I don't know if you call it flavors, kind of really pop, and like people kind of need so much, to taste
qualities of
when you've been eating like that. And when I notice when people start eating real food, it can take them a minute to like go, oh wait, this is what food tastes like now. Okay, now I get it. You know what I mean?
Absolutely. Yes.
Yeah.
And, for over a decade, I ran an office working as a nutritionist, and I was one of those people who was, at the time, unfortunately, I think we go through this phase of just kind of being dogmatic, like this diet is the best diet, and just kind of handing it out to everybody.
Yeah.
And part of that was, I didn't really get that. Like, if somebody's going from the Jack in the Box drive-through and I'm like having them to eat whatever it is, at the time, maybe it was a kale salad, which I'm not advocating for kale salads out here. All right. I'm just saying that is a mighty jump, right? Or stop drinking that Pepsi, go and get a wheatgrass shot every day. That's ridiculous. All right. Some people will suffer through it. But that is a very small guild of humanity.
Right.
And that's also, again, why I approached it the way that I did with the Eat Smarter Family Cookbook was, what are the foods that we love in our culture, right? My family loves pancakes. We love brunch. And so let's lean into that. Like for me, when I was very unwell, living in Ferguson, Missouri, this glorified food desert, struggling with my health, advanced arthritic condition of my spine, and my bone density was so low, I broke my hip at track practice. All right. I was severely sick. but I loved McDonald's breakfast, and I get it as often as I could, in particular the hot cakes and sausage. All right, the hot cakes and sausage. And so rather than using these ultra processed grains as a base, right? And not to villainize all grains, by the way, but the grains that are in that hot cake, so-called hot cake, it's not very hot, actually. You know, according to the WHO, glyphosate, which is this compound used, it's not just used as a pesticide, but it's also used as a drying agent to help these grains to be processed faster. All right. And there's like a loophole that's been used in the industry for. And the WHO has categorized glyphosate as a group 2A carcinogen. All right. That means it probably causes cancer in humans. And you would think, okay, well, that's not in our food supply, right? Or not abundant. No, now we know that it should be taken out of our, no, it's still. Just recently, the Environmental Working Group, and pretty much everything that I'm sharing, by the way, are the studies that are in the book, but the Environmental Working Group did an analysis of the most popular grain products on US store shelves and found 80 to 90% of these products were contaminated with glyphosate. All right, a known group 2A carcinogen. All right, so rather than using those grains, what if we use an incredibly nutrient dense, but also delicious base for these pancakes? And that was what I did when I designed these sweet potato protein pancakes that are in the book. And not only did we increase the protein fraction of what would often be in a pancake, but the base is it's a sweet potato. It tastes amazing, you know? And so, but we're not going from, okay, stop eating those pancakes and eat these flax crackers, right? We're like, make this pancake recipe. And by the way, it's only like 5 ingredients. Right? It's also simple. You know, you don't have to turn your whole kitchen upside down. And you probably have seen a sweet potato before, by the way. You know, there are all these other cool things that, you know, are out there on the market, different flours and all those things, but it can sometimes complicate things. And so that's what the mission was. Even, I mentioned the breakfast at McDonald's. That was another recipe that was my inspiration. And there's an upgraded, I called it the upgraded breakfast sandwich in the book.
I've made it.
I flip it out.
I haven't made that one.
So good. I made it for dinner like 2 weeks ago, and my sons were like, "This is so good."
See, I'm not making it up, you know, and you know, that's also one of my favorite things, breakfast for dinner, you know, having breakfast for dinner.
Easy.
And what we're doing is like leaning into what we know, like, and trust also, and just upgrading the quality. And most importantly, there's something, and I'll share this with you, and I don't talk about this very often, but I was very intentional in the way I was designing these recipes, because as you mentioned, there's an apprehension to certain, you know, going from this ultra processed food to eating real food. And part of it, it's not always the flavor, although, you know, we have some brilliant food scientists who've designed certain things. You know, I can break this down to the nth degree, you know, just like using a gas chromatograph to isolate flavors, the chemistry of certain flavors, and being able to add the flavor of a cherry to things that are not cherry, you know, whether that's a cherry Coke, whether that's cherry ice cream, no cherries necessary. And really muddying up the metabolic waters of like the communication between food and our bodies. And we evolved with this mechanism called post-ingestive feedback. So whenever we would eat a food, if we were to eat a cherry, you know, today, same as 1,000 years ago, our cells are really taking notes on what it got from that cherry as far as the nutrients are concerned. It would be like, you know, okay, this was a source of vitamin C. This is a naturally occurring source of melatonin. I found some melatonin in these cherries. We have these anthocyanins that are really good for my metabolic health. You know, the list goes on. Some copper, whatever it is.
Quercetin,
if you would,
too.
Yeah.
Cherries.
And if you develop a deficiency on any of those things, what would happen is our bodies would drive us to create a subtle craving to go and seek out more of those cherries.
Yeah.
It's this beautifully designed system that now food scientists have come in and just like, forget all that. Forget about that intelligence system. We're going to give you these flavors without the actual nutrition. As a matter of fact, we're going to muddy this up with all these other chemicals. And so what I did was I looked at what are the things that actually influence our pleasure with eating. And yes, the taste. And so humans, we have one of the most from our knowledge, we can't actually talk to a sheep, or, I don't know, a bat or whatever the case might be. But from our knowledge and just studying certain types of cells, we have one of the most complex flavor palettes, like receptors of any species. So this is why we can taste all of these subtle things. But a big part of that interaction too is our nose. The human nose is amazing at detecting things in food, scents in food that add to flavors. And if anybody's ever had the experience of like having a sinus, being clogged up or sick and your food tastes different, it's because of your sense of smell. So thinking about that, what are those smells? Like, I'm thinking about that with these recipes. And I made a recipe on the set of Good Morning America a few weeks ago. And it's as if nobody's ever made a recipe on the show before. The staff was flipping out. Okay. People were just like literally doing this, trying to inhale some of the smells from the chili, And but here's the last part that I don't usually talk about this. Sound.
Yeah.
Sound is actually super important in our experience of joy with eating food. If we have a lot of mushy kind of soft things in a meal, we tend to want to get something crunchy.
Yeah.
And we might seek out, if we're lacking that crunchiness from our meal, we might seek that out in the form of some chips afterwards.
Exactly.
Right? We need that for satisfaction. And we actually, this is super weird, but there was a Nobel Prize awarded for what was called the sonic chip experiment. Right? The sonic chip experiment. This is real, but here's the caveat. This was an Ig Nobel Prize. So this is like the Nobel committee like puts this on, but it's got like super weird stuff. They give it a weird award for things as they describe it, things that make you laugh, but also make you think. And so what the researchers did was they took a food. First, they had to find a food that was very uniform and the same, basically, from bite to bite. And so they used Pringles. All right. Pringles. I've definitely had a can or 12 in my life. All right. And so they used Pringles and they put headphones on the study participants and they amplified certain aspects of the crunch. And they found that when they amplified the crunch in a certain way, it increased their feelings of satisfaction by about 15%. They felt that the food was about 15% more fresh and tasty. They tasted better when they amplified the crunch. And the participants didn't know that this was going on, that this was what they were doing. They were simply interacting with one of our deep desires, which through our evolution, if we were to go to, come across some apples and we bite into that apple and it's soft, that is a cue to our biology. Like that might not be good.
Yeah.
We need something crisp, right? And so like that crunch, that crispness is an important part of the construct of our meals. And so again, I was very intentional about addressing textures, of addressing tastes, smells, all those things. So it's like a real food experience that can compete with ultra processed foods, if not blow them out of the water.
Yes. And the whole, especially in the health space, food is fuel, but we want to enjoy our food. It's an experience, right? I know it is for me, and I want anybody that I've worked with to enjoy food. Healthy food can taste good. So that's awesome. You were speaking my language with the crunch because
Alyssa loves her some chips.
Yes.
It's so beautiful because, and these are some of our colleagues, they're like, food is fuel, eat to live, don't live to eat. And there was even, one of the icons in health back in the day, he said, if it tastes good, spit it out.
Oh my goodness.
Right? If it tastes good, spit it out. Like these are such neurotic, crazy things. And keep in mind, there are people that can operate like that and still be happy. All right. But chances are, for the average person, and by the way, with that being said, that is based on complete, I don't even want to call it a theory. It's complete ignorance. Because as a human and also every other species, if you think about why do certain animals eat certain things, why does that sheep eat that? Why does, that dog eat that? We are naturally driven to eat things that taste good to us.
Exactly.
It's not something to villainize. It's something to lean into and understand. And also realize that food scientists have manipulated our desire to eat tasty things. Absolutely.
Oh,
that has
yeah.
absolutely happened. So the problem is not our desire to eat delicious food. The problem is where we're seeking that deliciousness from. That's really the issue.
Yeah.
True.
So, well, let's talk about how important it is eating with friends and family and how that can even potentially reduce obesity, depression, eating in isolation can almost cause some of these things. So can we touch base on that a little bit?
Absolutely, yes. And again, this is why I wrote this book and started this project, because, well, first of all, I can literally, this is not an exaggeration. I can count on my hands how many times I sat down and ate a meal with my immediate family growing up. So like my mother, stepfather, brother, sister. I ate with my brother and sister a lot, but it was usually like grab something and find a place to sit kind of thing. A lot of times, especially as I got a little bit older, 7, 8, 9, grabbing food, getting in front of the TV, video game, going with my friends, whatever the case was, we didn't have a culture of eating together. We just didn't. And those times on my hands, like that's holidays. All right. And it just wasn't a part of our culture. But I do believe that if my parents knew that there was some protective benefit or supportive aspect for their kids to do this practice, that they would have done it.
Yeah.
And a lot of times we just don't know. We don't know, we don't know. And so some researchers at Harvard were compiling a vast amount of data on family eating behaviors and food consumption, food choices for years and years and years. And what they found was that families that eat together on a regular basis consume significantly higher amounts of minimally processed foods, namely fruits and vegetables, and also radically higher amounts of essential nutrients that help to prevent diseases in those family members. And they also noted, though, that when they ate together regularly, they consumed far less ultra-processed foods, right? And they're just like, wow, that's really, really interesting. And now, just to fast forward a little bit before I come back and share the rest of this data, they also noted that only about 30% of families today eat together on a regular basis, all right, in the United States. This is something we evolved doing as a species, as a tribe. Everybody was involved in this process. And now it's just like rarely happens. It's now on the endangered species list. And so for me, when I read that data, I was like, okay, that's cool, but what is the minimum effective dose? Like when you say eat together on a regular basis, what is that? That wasn't there in the data. And so I kept digging, and I came across a study published in the journal Pediatrics looking at health outcomes for kids specifically. And this study found that kids that eat with their parents on a regular basis, or at least one parent on a regular basis, had dramatically less incidence of developing obesity and of developing disordered eating. All right. And what they found was that number, that minimum effective dose, was 3 meals a week or more, but 3 meals a week made this shift happen with the behaviors and health outcomes for those kids. And with that being said, what about us as parents? And one study that I shared in the book was done on office workers at IBM. And, this is working in tech. So, it could definitely be stressful. Yeah. And this was published in Family and Consumer Sciences. And what they did was they found that office workers, and this was the key, regardless of how high their stress was, and stuff, this stuff, life is stressful. Stuff is
so stressful. Yeah.
So much stuff going on. But no matter how high their stress was at work, if they were able to eat dinner with their family on a regular basis, their work morale stayed high, the stress stayed manageable, meaning they were able to metabolize the stress better. And of course, productivity stayed high. But as soon as things started cutting into their ability to eat with their families, their work morale started to plummet. All right. Stress became more unmanageable. And eventually what's going to happen? Burnout, lower work performance, potentially quitting their job. The list goes on, or finding somewhere else, or just suffering. Right. there was something protective about eating with their family. And I can go on and on. There's several other studies that affirm this, but the most important thing for me is, what is it? What's going on behind the scenes to make it something like that happen? Some people can just know that that's the thing and start like, okay, 3 meals a week. Got it.
Mm-hmm.
I need to know why. I want to know what's going on behind the scenes. And I'll share a couple of things. So one interesting thing, and what we see with those office workers, for example, when we get around people that we love, we start producing more oxytocin, right? And so this is this very powerful bonding chemical that we produce naturally. And oxytocin is, of course, it's been in the literature for years, but it's having a moment right now. All right. And it's getting cute nicknames like the cuddle hormone. Some people call it, some scientists call it the love hormone, but then there's like anandamide. There's some other love hormones as well. But basically, this promotes bonding with people, bonding with our babies, bonding with each other. And what's so fascinating is that this is something we just automatically produce. But if we're not putting ourselves in the conditions to produce it, we're going to be missing out.
Yeah.
And what the research is indicating is that oxytocin, of all the different hormones that are being studied, has this neutralizing effect on cortisol, right? So one of our glorified stress hormones that's not bad, but the way that we're living our lives today, it tends to run way too hot, right? Way too hot and heavy. And so oxytocin comes in and just kind of like mellows out that cortisol, and it just makes us feel better, even if we're unconscious of it. Also, just taking a meta perspective, when we're with friends and family and, eating together and hanging out, we see this large tendency to shift over from the sympathetic fight or flight nervous system overall to the parasympathetic. And this is the nickname for this one. It's so important for people to understand. I heard this in college, but I didn't get it. Rest and digest is the nickname. Key word here, digest. Digest. So what we see is when we're in this state, we're assimilating, digesting, and eliminating our food better. All right. It is making everything work better because we're now in this more regenerative state with our nervous system versus this fight or flight, go, go, go thing that is, for a lot of us, is just kind of running like a low-grade fever all the time.
Yeah.
I'm going to share one more aspect of this, and there are many other aspects. One other is the psychological benefit. And wow, I mean, we're living at a very strange time right now where our devices have kind of divided us. It's supposed to be about connection, and it can be if used with intelligence and efficacy. We could, have incredible connections, but it does not replace human contact in the real world. It just doesn't. We don't produce the same chemistry. And for our children in particular that are growing up in this, because we remember a time when we could, when you leave the house, you're just gone. People are not you can't get in touch, or like cell phones and all that stuff. You're just, I'll see you when you get back.
Yeah.
Right? Now we have 24/7 access to us, and also 24/7 access to just about everything known to man. All right. And it's just right there in the palm of our hand. It is a huge responsibility that most people are unaware of because they're just handed this.
Yes.
And they're not taught about the pitfalls.
Yeah. Born into it.
Yeah. And
for our
kids are
in particular,
I'm sorry. I just want to say real quick, because I don't want to lose it. Kids are losing the ability to talk to people. You know what I mean? Because they're so used to texting now, and they don't know how to have conversations anymore, like in real life. So I think, and I love in your book how you're like, take the phones away, sit down at the table, because it's that one-on-one or, family group or whatever contact, having a conversation, speaking, using our social skills,
being present.
being present, all those things are so important.
It's in particular for our kids, and in particular for teens. And by the way, this isn't just hearsay. I'm guessing this would be beneficial. There's a reason we've seen dramatic increases in anxiety and depression and attention deficit disorder, and the list goes on and on. And some of my close colleagues, I'm seeing one next week, Dr. Uma Naidu at Harvard. All right, she's a psychiatrist. I'm just like, do we just have better testing? Is that what it is? She's like, no. I've been doing this for 30 years. 30 years. I have seen a marked increase in depression in children. She's like, it doesn't even make sense how high it's gotten. Anxiety, in particular ADHD.
Yeah.
And so the reason I'm bringing this up is that through our cell phones, our kids, as soon as you look at your phone, you're no longer here.
No.
You're not here in the present moment when you go into social media. Not to villainize social media, it has its benefits, but it takes you away from here. And what we're doing is when you go on social media, 99.5% of what you see is people's highlights.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
All right. And we have this natural inclination to compare ourselves. And so we get into this comparison on loop as we're seeing people's highlights and what we're not measuring up to. And now we're seeing everybody, but we're not being seen. And we have a deep psychological human need to feel seen, to feel significant, to feel like we matter.
Yeah.
This is something that was part of our survival. If we're not a part of the tribe and feel like we are a contributor and we matter in this tribe, we will die.
Yeah.
You know, it is that deep. You know, it's tied to our lifeline. And so having family dinners a couple of nights a week, that dinner table is a unifier and an opportunity for your kid to feel seen, for you to put eyes on them. And also, most of our communication, and this has been in psychology for a long time, but we don't get it, is nonverbal.
Right.
So being able to pick up those cues, being able to pick up, those subtle things when your child might be saying something, but they're giving off a certain energy. And we know our kids better than anybody, but are we paying attention to them? Because we're letting this happen oftentimes, and this is just being real. This is happening right under our nose. None of us are perfect, by the way. No. I've missed a thing or 20, but it gives us an opportunity for us to unite and to be present and, to fill their cup, like for them to really feel seen, heard, and to feel like they matter. And they take that with them as they go into this world that is increasingly complex.
For sure.
So true.
I know so many families, our moms and dads are listening right now, and they're thinking, okay, I really need to start prioritizing family meals. So what are some simple ways they can prioritize these family meals, making them more consistent and rewarding? Like, what are some things you do with your family to keep that consistency?
Yes. Thank you for asking this, because the key is, you said the R word is rewarding.
Yeah.
It is rewarding. It has to be rewarding because our cell phones are super rewarding as far as our biochemistry is concerned. That dopamine and opioid system feedback loop is just like, we have a deep curiosity as a species, and curiosity itself. And I was just talking with Dr. Judd Brewer, leading psychiatrist, and he was sharing how just the act of curiosity creates the chemistry of reward in our body. So that drives us. We're just the seeking behavior. And we got the scroll, like we're curious. What's next? Yeah. And so to be like, put your phone away and have dinner with your family, like those rewarding mechanisms might not match up.
Yeah.
And so we have to intentionally bring the reward to the table, literally. All right. And this is where the fun comes in at, truly. Like, if my family's all through this book, of course, but like people who've been following me, I've been in this field. It's 21 years, maybe 21 or maybe 22 years, something like that, something crazy. But if people have been exposed to me and my family, like, we're having a good time, but part of it was kind of accidental, some things I stumbled onto with my personality and embedding that in my family culture. But some things were like, I intentionally put them in. And so let's break this down. How do we do this, make this more rewarding, and do it in the first place? Number one, I'm a huge advocate of minimum effective dose. If you're going from rarely, if ever, having a family dinner, 2 days a week, pick 2 days. All right. Maybe even one if you don't even do it at all. But the minimum effective dose, according to the data, is 3. And so if you want to step up to that challenge, maybe you do have family dinners occasionally. You want to go like, let's make this consistent. Let's get all these benefits. The key is you have to schedule it. You have to schedule it. We have all this stuff on our calendars that matter far less than our families. And so for many of us, if we don't schedule it, it's not real. We need to put it physically into our calendar that when pick whatever days work best for you and your family. We've all got stuff going on. My son's got basketball practice tonight, from 6 to 8. What?
Yeah.
Like right in the, why you gotta make it complicated?
Same.
But this would be a night that obviously we're not doing the family dinner, but we could do that on Tuesday and Thursday, and then we can have a family brunch on Sunday, right? I find a way. And by the way, one of the other studies that I shared in the book, it doesn't matter what meal it is. It doesn't have to be dinner. Okay. This could be breakfast.
Yeah.
All right. This could just finding a way that works for you. But the important thing is sitting down and eating with your family. And so schedule it. That's step number one. Schedule it, make it real. Number two, when it comes to the food part of this, and I talk a lot about that in the book too, like obviously a big part of this is like making delicious food, but you've got to create the kitchen culture that you want and that feels good to you. So the vibe that you like in the kitchen, if you want to actually be in there and make food, but you don't even have to make the food. All right. If something happens and you're, for example, maybe practices switched and you didn't have time to go to the grocery store and you DoorDash it, still sit down and eat with your family. All right. On the scheduled days. All right. And now with that being said, and by the way, I mean, we could do a whole thing just talking about the kitchen culture, but let's talk about the reward.
Yeah.
On how do we actually anchor this in to make it rewarding and make everybody want to be a part of it. This is going to take some experimentation to find out what your family loves the most. And I've been hearing this incredible feedback, stuff I never even thought about. And I'll share one that somebody just told me yesterday. So for my family, what we found, one of the things that we do kind of as a unifier for the meal, just to get everybody talking and using their voice in cohesive ways, like we go around and we share 3 things that we're grateful for from that day. All right. That's how we've been starting our meals for years. Also, you've done things like everybody go around and share something they failed at today. Right? What did you fail at? And being able to think about that. And that helped to humanize me, by the way, because they might see dad as like invincible, like he doesn't struggle, right? And this happens with moms and dads, all over the place. We're like, we want our kids to like appreciate us or whatever the case might be, but we don't humanize ourselves because we always have this strong face on and we'll get it done. We'll do whatever it takes. But this helps to develop some compassion. And I've seen it play out in the real world. So that's what we do to start the meal. We have amazing food. For us, or my family, 9 times out of 10, we playing music.
Oh yeah.
In the background. And somehow, some way, and I've got tons of video from years ago. And my wife was just looking at these video clips this morning, some of them, and my youngest son, somehow, some way will end up having a rap battle after dinner or dancing.
Love that.
It just happened organic. Yeah. This is before I knew this data. It just happened. And we eventually, we have a microphone downstairs that we pass around. And, everybody's just freestyling, and just kind of, sometimes it'd be like a battle, like a rap battle. Sometimes it'd be like complimentary and, just kind of vibing together. We got to a point where we're passing around my son's iPad and like making beats on it. Just like, it's crazy. Like,
your kids are going to remember that forever.
Yeah.
It's going to be
already
for memories. Yes.
Exactly.
I think I saw a reel of yours one time and you guys, I think we're cleaning. This was a while ago, maybe a year or so. You guys think we're like cleaning up dinner maybe, and you're all dancing in the kitchen. And I was like, I like them. I want to go over there.
Show more of that. Exactly.
And so that could be for your family, it could be singing and dancing and performing and something creative, doing some art together. It could be any of those things. It could be a family game night. And we've done that a ton of times as well. And getting creative even in that, whether it's even with the phone and playing heads up or like getting board games or making your own games, And the thing that I just found out yesterday from a friend of mine who's been working in health and fitness for almost 20 years himself, they play a board game while having dinner. And I never thought about that before. All right. And I was just like, that's interesting. And it seems to be working for him and his family. Like, it's just a vibe. His boys absolutely love it. He has I think they're 16 now, twin boys, and they still are doing this to this day. So experimenting, finding out something that creates a sense of reward, because whether you're conscious of it or not, and your kids will largely not be aware of this, but they'll know that this family dinner is going to lead to something that I have fun with, that I enjoy, that I get to express myself, right? And that can, because the reward often, to be, something that has long-term effectiveness, it needs to be equal to or greater than that other thing.
Right.
The cell phone has a lot of attraction. And so, even after dinner, like my youngest son and I, we go play a video game. Like, that's the after dinner, anchor. Yep. So there's so many ways to go about this, but we need to consciously find a way to bring reward. We can use food as well, but you need to be mindful of this. You got to know thyself, know your kids. We don't want to make food the ultimate reward, but with just another example, my youngest son, just if we got a family dinner night that got switched, my youngest son's personality, he just needs to know where and when. He's good to go. Just tell me where and when, but tell me in advance. All right. My older son, go with the flow, whatever. Just, okay, cool, whatever. It's whatever. My youngest son, if his mental schedule is interrupted, you're going to get some grumbling. All right. He's not going to be happy about it. So if we last minute switch a family dinner and he had his objective of what his night was about to be, he's going to do the grumbling. But I can approach that like, okay, hey, bud, actually, we can't do family dinner tomorrow, so we're going to do it tonight. Do you want to do the, for dessert, do you want to have the cherry frozen yogurt pops or the Snicker bites?
That's right.
Those
the
are
Smart
good.
Family Cookbook, of course. And he's like, oh, dessert. I like dessert. Him and his mom, they're the sweeties. And as you talked about the crunch earlier, my wife, she's all about the crunchiness as well.
That's those graham crackers and the cherry popsicles that you have, right?
Listen, the thing is, it's like all of these things can taste amazing, but they're all, as there's like over 40 science-backed foods that I'm using for some of these key ingredients. So like those cherry frozen yogurt pops, I wasn't just making it up earlier when I used the cherries as an example. It's one of the, if not the most dense source of naturally occurring melatonin found in a fruit. These anthocyanins have been found to target fat cells. It's been found to have some benefits with our, cognitive function. The list goes on and on. Okay, cool. You can eat some cherries. Some people will do that. But what if we turn these into delicious popsicles that have probiotics from the frozen yogurt? Like, come on.
Yeah.
It's awesome. And sometimes you just want a frozen treat. And now you can go and it's something fun and easy to make with the kids. And now if you have that desire, you got something healthy or health affirming that you can go get right there in your freezer.
It's true. Yeah. Liam loves to make those. We actually bought a popsicle maker specifically for that recipe.
Oh, that's so awesome. I have a video right here. My wife, it just came up on my phone today. You know how your phone will give you memories?
Yeah.
And I was not planning on this whatsoever. I hope that I downloaded it and I maybe didn't. Where is it at? Do I go to For You? And you might have to edit this, but where is it? Oh my God.
This was a memory.
I got it. Sorry about that.
Oh, it's okay.
Oh my God. Oh, this is going to make me emotional. My son is 12 now, and he's like 5'8". He's a tall kid. This is when he was maybe 3.
Oh, and that's his popsicle. That's in the recipe book.
This is a different popsicle.
Yeah, the other ones are a little bit more.
Those memories just sucker punch you right in the gut, don't they?
Do you hear his voice?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh.
You need a spoon. It got blueberries. Is that blueberries?
Yeah, blueberries.
Wow.
Blueberries. I love it.
Oh, listen to this is the best part. I'm sorry. Oh, I'm so sorry.
You mommy make it.
Mommy make it. Mommy's so awesome.
I want some mommy flowers.
You do mommy flower?
Yes.
Oh,
Are you kidding me? Are you
Wow.
best.
are you kidding me?
Oh, the
That
best.
that is so cool that you have that like on
Mhm.
video, you know?
Like 10
Oh,
years ago, like
Yeah.
this is real, and yeah, so I'm grateful to share that with you. I haven't shared that with anybody.
Aw.
it's cool how the dinner table and food can really bring you together as a
Really and
family.
truly.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I know
That's
you
the
have to
power,
go, but I wanted to ask you because you talk about this kind of stuff, and I wanted to see if you had, one more takeaway for the listeners. So any, cooking tips for meal prep or making things healthier and more enjoyable?
This is a whole other episode on this in of itself. I'm a big fan of just thinking in terms of food quality.
Yeah.
When I changed my own health, again, living in a glorified food desert in Ferguson, Missouri, and all the boxes you could check, no access, no examples, just surrounded by ultra processed foods. There wasn't a gym in my city. All right. This just wasn't something I was exposed to. And the first thing that I did to get well, the first thing that I did actually was an experiment based on marketing from the television. But, I was like, I should probably lose weight. And so I did Slim Fast first, just a confession. And it tasted disgusting, of course. And the commercials like shake for breakfast, one for lunch, sensible dinner, right? And it was suffering. And I thought that was another thing I took into my practice to help to heal people from. I thought that me starving myself and being hungry all day meant that it was working.
Yeah.
And, nothing could be further from the truth, especially long-term health and long-term weight loss. And so, but the thing that I ultimately did, and I'm so grateful that I wouldn't say that I stumbled upon it, but because it was always there, but I just wasn't attuned to it. But I was asking questions, and I just improved the food quality. I focused on that. And so rather than going to, McDonald's or Burger King, whatever I was doing, and getting a fast food burger and fries, which I was doing pretty much every single day, no exaggerating, except if I didn't have like $2 or $3, then I'd eat ultra processed foods at home.
Mm-hmm.
And so rather than doing that, I found out there was one Whole Foods grocery store in all of St. Louis, which St. Louis is a major city, is a big city. One, this is not the hub of health. In Los Angeles, I can literally throw a stone in any direction and you're going to be within feet of a Whole Foods. All right. It's just like the access is different here. But I found my way. I found a way to get to there. And eventually I found a farmer's market that was right outside of the part of Ferguson that I lived in. This was the quote, good part of Ferguson. And I started to just, rather than that, okay, let me get grass-fed beef. And also let me, in particular, whatever's on sale. So maybe it's like bison, or maybe it's like whatever, the ground pork, whatever it might have been at the time. I was going off of what I could afford or what was cheapest, and I'd stock up on it, right? So if this was on sale, let me buy a bunch and freeze the rest, right? And so then I'd use like an organic, sprouted bun or something like. I was just figuring things out. And rather than those, if you guys have seen Supersize Me, of course, those fries that stay, it's like petrified wood, it just stays the same forever.
Yes.
Rather than eating whatever that is, I've got these organic oven fries over here, or I'm eating a side of, broccoli or some fruit or something. And again, these were all close to me. Like I'm still eating a delicious burger and, even the fries if I wanted, but the quality is so much better. That in and of itself massively transformed my health. My arthritic condition with my spine, the 2 degenerative disc that I had, L4, L5, S1. After I got a scan done 9 months later, after focusing on changing my nutrition, both of those discs had retracted, gotten back into place, and I increased the density or the volume of my disc substantially. So now that the light was shining through them again, where they were literally black on my initial scan. And I was making my body out of far superior materials.
Yeah.
And so that's what the number one advocation, the simplest one, is to focus on food quality.
Yeah.
All right. You eat the foods that you love, but do your best to get higher quality versions that don't have all of these newly invented chemicals added to them. We've mentioned glyphosate earlier, but there's a ton of other ones.
Yeah.
Do your best, if you can, to eat more foods that don't come with labels in the first place. But the key, and this is why this book is such a valuable resource, is that the key is being able to know what to do with them and to make delicious foods, and also simplicity, because some of this stuff, we've covered a lot of science today in a short amount of time. Some of this stuff can be seemingly complicated. And I've got friends and colleagues, and they've got recipe books. I got a ton of my friends' recipe books. Some of those recipes could be a bit much.
Yeah.
Yeah.
A lot of ingredients.
Over here,
Keep
get
it
a
simple.
nut milk bag and whatever, it's just like, that's cool. But the average person,
I know.
and
Yeah.
so
Keep it simple.
that's what this resource is for. And, it's available at bookstores nationwide. Is a instant USA Today national bestseller. And it was a number 1 new release cookbook in the United States. And which is, again, it's crazy. I'm not Gordon Ramsay. He's the only chef TV person I know, just from the memes. But to say that is coming from where I come from is so powerful.
Yeah.
And just speaks to the power of intention and empowerment and the power of real food.
Yes.
Yeah. And
So
it's such a
everybody,
great book. It really
go
is.
out there and get Eat Smarter Family Cookbook, and tell everybody about your podcast. I'm sure all of our listeners listen to it.
Well, my show is called The Model Health Show, and we're in our 10th year of doing this show, and it's my favorite thing to do. It's my absolute favorite thing to do. It's required me to get better every single week. I know that this show is coming, and so whether it's I'm doing a absolute masterclass on whatever subject matter it is myself, and hours upon hours of research and kind of deconstructing things, finding fun and creative ways to share the science, or I'm bringing on the very best people in their respective fields to share their science and, going through their data and their research, reading their books, whatever the case might be. It's required me to keep learning, to keep getting better, to keep challenging myself. And so I'm so proud of it. I'm so proud I said yes to doing it. But, we have hundreds of episodes at this point, but every single week, because we could see the stats, thousands of people go back and start listening at episode 1 and work their way up.
That's
it's
really
like,
good.
My wife showed me, I was like, oh, like, this must be good. This must be really good.
I love how humble you are. You're great. Never change. It's a good quality.
Thank you. I received that. Thank you.
Well, thank you so much for coming on. We're so honored to have you. And this was such a great episode. And I hope everyone gets your book and listens to your podcast and all the things.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it. And by the way, I just found out earlier today, and I don't know if when this is going to publish, but Amazon, because of the book was like a bestseller there, they just dropped the list price by like $10 on Amazon.
Okay.
I don't know how long that will be, but if people
we're
pop
going
up
to air
Amazon,
it soon. Yeah, we'll air it soon. So it will probably be the same. So go check it out there. Well, thank you everyone for listening.
We hope you guys enjoyed this episode. If you did, if you can pop over and leave a review, that would be awesome. You can also find us over at healthbabes.com, where you can find our courses, our latest book. We also are on Instagram at The Health Babes, at Dr. Becky Campbell, or at Dr. Krystal Hohn. I hope you guys have a great rest of your day.